Hey you guys, Guy Stevens. The other day we made a video about a way to easily navigate around in FileMaker, and we did something very simple, a very simple characters table with different characters and a little portal on the side so we could easily maneuver to the other characters without having to leave our layout. Now I would like to take this a step further and add an extra table to this. If you don't have this file, you can download it in the description, or you can go and watch my previous video first, because this is basically a continuation of this previous video. I'll try to put up a like a link to this previous video up top if I can figure out how to do that. Anyway, this is very simple, just one simple characters table. But what if we have a bunch of characters but also a bunch of stories? If we have that, we would have a table for stories, then we would have a bunch of characters, and in every story there would be certain characters in that story, and in the next story there would be other characters. So there's basically a relationship between those two tables, between the stories and the characters. What if we would like to do something like that, and we would like to keep it on as a few layouts as possible so that we can maneuver through our different stories on this layout, but we could also kind of add characters to that story, see their information, and maybe create new ones. If we would like to do that, we're going to try and figure that out. We're going to start with a little recap of what we basically already have, because I'm going to start a similar look like this one, but based on the stories table, but we still have to make that one. So we're going to go to File, Manage Database, and we're going to create a stories table. So we have one table so far, and we're just going to add another one for stories. And we're going to double click it so we arrive in the fields, and we're going to create a few fields, and we're going to create an ID field, which is going to be a number. And I'm going to set this one to auto enter serial number so that every story has its unique ID. Every story has a title, and that's going to be a text type. Then we're going to have a summary, which is also a text, and then the actual story itself. Okay, that sounds like a good start to me. Let's go. Let's make a layout for this. Let's see what we've got here. We've got this one. What we're gonna do is, I've actually not done in here what I usually do, but let's do it now. I usually put my first table, the table that is created by FileMaker, I usually put that in table view so that I can always kind of go back and look at it to see the actual data that's in there. And then what I'm gonna have to do is I'm gonna have to make a new layout called Lay Stories. And that's going to be a computer layout and a form view, and I'm going to finish it. Okay, so this gives me basically the exact same thing as what I already had. I'm going to go to View, Field Picker, and then from my, oops, this one is still coming from my characters. That's not correct. I missed that in the previous step. This needs to show my stories. Okay, and then if I go to my View, Field Picker, then I'm getting my stories. I want my title, my summary, and my story. I want them somewhere here, and then they show up. That's kind of nice. Okay. So if we exit the layout, I do maybe want to make this a little neat. So I'm going to go to File, Manage, Layouts. I'm going to create a new folder here called Tables. And I'm going to create another folder here called Layouts. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my stories table view in tables and my lay stories in layouts. I didn't do that for these, but I could figure that out later. I like this layout, so I'm going to put this one in layouts. And I guess I could just make a new one real quick for characters. Let's do table characters, and actually I don't really want this, so let's do that. Let's finish. Let's add all of these here. Okay, just a quick thing to get this stuff organized, and then go back to File, Manage Layouts, and put this table of the characters in the tables. Okay, now I have my, let's get this organized. Okay, this is kind of neat. So I've got my, I'm actually gonna put these on top just to really get this stuff like I want it. Okay, so if I want to look at my actual data, I go in here. And if I want to look at my layouts, I go in here. So this is the one I'm going to be working with now. And let's make a new story. Let's make a story called The Evil Witch. And the summary is there once was an evil witch. I don't know if I would be good at making stories, but oh, that's not good. An evil witch. Okay, that sounds like a thriller, and I'm not gonna write the story yet because, well, you guys would be bored. Okay, so to recap and to basically redo what I did in the other file, I would like to have a list of stories here so that I can click through them and easily move from the one story to the next. Now, how can I do that? That list is gonna be a portal, but a portal can only show records from related tables. And I want to see all my stories, so I need to get the records from all of my stories. But if we go into File Manage Database and we go to our relationships, then what we see is I've got my stories, but it doesn't have a related table yet. But the trick is kind of here. What we can do is, and in fact, I'm going to quickly give all of these a certain color. I'll make these red, and the stories, I'll make them blue. There, so, oops, that's not blue. That's not even close to blue. That's purple. It's bluer. Okay, if I want to show all of my stories, like you can see here, I basically first of all need to have a second occurrence of this table, and I can do that by either Alt dragging on the Mac or by just using these two plus icons here, and I'm going to call this one stories underscore all, and then I have to create a relationship between these two. And if I would create a normal relationship, then basically what I'm going to get is, if I am on my stories layout, the story that I'm going to see in this table occurrence is going to be the one where the ID is the same as the ID here. But that's always just going to show me one story. I can actually prove it to you by, and this is good because we're learning about relationships now. I mean, not those kinds of relationships, but you know. There you go. I'm gonna do stories all. I'm gonna do none of these, or maybe this one. And then I'm gonna add the title of the story. Okay, cool. And then I'm gonna quickly take this one. I'm gonna take my inspector that had moved up a bit, and I'm gonna set this to a default because a minimal edit box doesn't have an edge around it, a border around it, and I don't like that. So okay, I've got my story, The Evil Witch, and that shows up in my list, and that's kind of cool, but I'm going to make a new story, which is about the Good Witch. I don't know if those exist, but yeah, okay. So now only my Good Witch shows up, and in this record only my Evil Witch shows up. And of course that is logical because my relationship is basically telling me that from the stories all, I only want to see the stories that have the same ID as my actual story, and that's pretty useless. I want to see all the stories, so that requires that other operator, the X operator here. And the X operator is like, it's also called an X join or a Cartesian join, and basically what it does is it will show me all the records in here no matter what the value is here. But you do have to have a field that does have a value, so I'm always going to use the ID for this, ID on both sides. And then it's basically going to show you all the stories, all the records here, because you're using this operator. Now, if you want to make sure that this is working, you do have to change this one here. So you have to change so that it actually becomes an X here. And then we can just say, okay, okay. And now all of my stories are showing up. Now we just have to create that little setup where if we click on one of these, we actually go to that record. So we need a button for that, and we're going to go to our scripts. Oof, this is big. We're going to make this a bit smaller, and we're going to make a new folder here. Actually, this one is for characters, and we actually had these scripts here on our character side, but we're going to make a one for stories. And then we're going to add one, which is a very simple one. If you remember from the last time, go to, go to select, go to story, that's fine, and then go to related record, and if we hit tab we get that one. And because we had that new table occurrence, we actually do have a relationship and a related record that we can go to a related record from the stories all, but show it on my layout lay story. So I'm going to show the related record, the one that I'm selecting, but I'm going to show it on my current layout. So that's kind of cool. I don't want to do any of these, so let's keep it simple. Let's hit Command S to save this one, and then let's see if this actually works. Let's go to edit layout. Let's click this one because that's eventually the one I'm going to want to click on, and then let's say button setup, because I'm going to turn this field into a button. It's going to perform a script, and it's going to perform the script from my stories folder here. Go to story, and I want to change my cursor to a hand over the button. I'm sorry if I'm going a little fast, but we kind of already did this in the previous video. So now we've got the good witch, and now we've got the evil witch. Okay, there's maybe one thing that we could add to this which would make it a little clearer as to what's happening. And that would be if we click on one of them, it would be cool if that one gets highlighted. Let's see if we can figure out how to do that. Now, what happens is, I don't show these anywhere, but if I add from my stories my ID field, then I could also add that one in here. It's not going to be pretty because stories all ID. Okay, cool. Just to show you that what's going on is, oops, it's only showing up on one here. It's probably because it's too close to the edge or something. There we go. So basically what's happening is if we select one like the good witch, which has ID number 2, then I'm going to my to my record which has ID number 2. So the thing that is the same in both of these is going to be the ID, of course the title as well, etc. But we can use the ID, and we can basically use conditional formatting to say if the ID of this one is the same as the ID of this one, then I want to do something. So I'm going to add a conditional formatting rule here that has a formula which says, I'm going to specify the formula, which says that if, and this one is one that I don't need, if my stories ID is equal to my stories all ID, then, and that's only going to be the case for the stories all record that has the same ID as the currently selected story, or the story that we're on, then if that is the case, then I would like to have a formatting happen, and the formatting happening is going to be a fill color that is going to be green, and that should make this look kind of cool. This one can go again, this one can go again, and there's this little blue and red diamond which tells you that there is a conditional formatting rule on this field. So let's try and see if this works. This looks green because the ID of this one is the same as the ID of my current record. Now I could also just kind of click back and forth here, and that also updates this because now I've gone to my first record, which is ID number 1, and this one is also ID number 1. But if I click on here, then the same thing happens, and this kind of looks cool, like how it would look in like real professional type stuff. Okay, so maybe we could add a little title here that says stories, and then we've got something cool already. There we go. And maybe one more thing that we could add that we already had in the previous setup as well, which was a button that says create a new story. And that we could just, because we've got the functionality for that anyway, we could just add like a big fat plus. Great. And then we can have that run a script. So I have to first create that script. Under stories, we've got create new story, and that basically just creates a new record, and then it goes to a field, go to field. That's why I'm creating a script, because there are 2 steps in this. If there's only one step, and basically that one step is new record request, then you don't need to make a script. You can just do it like that. with a simple step. Okay, so go to stories title. Now I might not even have to do that because basically that's probably going to be the first field in my tab order anyway. So if I create a new record, I probably will arrive in that field anyway, but I don't care. This is kind of fancy. Okay, first of all, I need to set this up to perform my script, create new story, and then I want to change this cursor to a hand when I hover over that button, because then I know it's as a button. I can click on this. So I can create a new story, and when I click on it, my cursor is already in there, and I can immediately start typing stuff. The little pig. Oops, and now I just hit my tab button and then I arrived in here. So that's not really ideal. I want to change that. So let's go to layouts, set tab order. And what I'm going to do is I could either, you can use this in two different ways. You can see the numbers here. It goes from 1 to 2 there to 3, 4. I could just go ahead and change the numbers, like I could type 2 in here, but if you have a lot of fields, that could be annoying. And what you could do then is you could just clear all and then just start clicking at the order of which you want. So I want this one to be 1, 2, 3, and then this one can be 4. Okay, cool. So now if I am in here and I hit tab, then I go to this one, tab, and then I tab in there, which is kind of useless. I don't really need a tab in there, but well, okay, maybe that could be handy for some other reason. Okay, so this is kind of cool. This is already working. I have my characters in there already as well, but I want to kind of integrate that into my stories layout, because I don't really want to go to too many other layouts, especially when I'm working on my story. I don't want to go click around and think about stuff. I just want this to just work in an easy kind of fashion. So what I want to do is I want to have my list of characters here. I want to be able to create new characters and choose which characters are in this story. And then I want to also be able to see their information here. So that would be pretty cool. Okay, the first problem. How do I create my list of characters? That's not so hard. That's basically the same as what we've done here. So let's go to File, Manage Database. We are on a layout based on our stories table. We want to show all our characters, and that's basically going to be the same as what we've got right here. But actually not, because I don't want to see all of my characters. I only want to see the characters that are actually taking part in my story. So what I'm going to need is I'm going to need an extra in-between table between the stories and the characters, where I basically select which characters are in which story. That kind of a table is called a join table. So what I'm going to need is I'm going to need this one. I'm going to duplicate this one by hitting the 2 plus signs, and I'm going to say characters underscore story. Okay, so I do want to have these characters showing up in my story, but I need that extra in between kind of join table. So let's make a new table and let's call this one join characters stories. Okay, and what we need in this one, not too much, just a simple ID, which is a number, which is a serial number. You might not even need that one, but I always add it just to be sure. You might need it in the future, and it is just handy to have. So then I need a story ID FK, which is going to be a number, and a character ID FK, which is also going to be a number. Okay, that's pretty simple stuff. Let's find this one here. It's right there. So let's get it down. Let's give it another color. Let's make this one yellow. And so when I'm on my story, I want to be able to create new characters that are also, or I want to be able to select characters to be in this story. So I'm going to start by relating the stories to this join table like this, very simple. And I'm going to say that I would like to be able to create these new join records from the story side. So from there. Now, if I delete this story, do I want those join records to go, or do I want them to stay? Well, if my story is deleted, then I don't need those join records anymore. So I can check this box, which basically tells me that when I delete a story, then those related join records should also be deleted, because if I delete the story, I do not have any need for those anymore. Now, this is not always the case. In certain cases, you don't want to have this checked, so you always have to think ahead, very hard to see whether if you want to use this or not. In this case, I think I do want that one, so I'm going to keep that one checked. Okay, very good. So now I've got my character ID, and I can relate this one here to this character. Very simple, and that way I can get the character information here in this joined record. Okay, let's do this one step at a time. So let's try to start with this. Let's edit my layout, and I think we are ready to create a new portal on this end. Actually, you know, I really like this one. This looks kind of cute. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy the whole thing. I'm going to alt drag this over here. And so that way I can just change this one, characters, and then I can double click this one. This one is going to come from my join characters stories. I shall allow the deletion of portal records, because if I add a character and then I see that I made a mistake, I want to be able to delete that. Sorting and filtering, I don't really want to do that right now, so let's just hit OK. And then what do we have here? I'm going to just quickly get rid of this one for a second so as not to be confused. Which one do I want to see here? Now, this is the join characters stories. So actually, this one can also do nothing for a second. I want to show a record from my join table, and that's the character IDFK. And basically what I would have to do in that character IDFK field is I would have to enter a character ID. Of course, I don't know any character IDs, so I'm just going to create a drop down for my characters. And then I can just choose one from the drop down. That will be easier. I see that I already have a value list for characters, so that's good. I'm going to select that one, and now let's have a look. That's kind of cool. I can just select a character, and there you go, they show up. Now, of course, only their IDs are showing, so that's kind of annoying, but I can just use my little trick here. Maybe I could make this a pop-up menu. Let's have a look. Okay, that does seem to work, and that's probably the easy way to go. I usually don't like popovers, or I don't use them. I don't know why, but I just don't. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep this a drop-down list. I'm going to alt drag this field over here. I'm going to say that I would like for this one to be the character's story, full name. Great. And then I'm going to make sure that this one is available in found mode but not in browse mode, and that this one is an edit box. And this one is available in browse but not in find mode. Great. And then I can just put this one on top of that one like so, and then that works as well. Now, FileMaker does have a little bug where you have to just nudge it a bit with your arrows and then go back into layout mode and nudge it back, and then it works for all records. It's kind of annoying, but hey, maybe a popover would not have been such a bad idea. Okay, so I've got two characters now that are in this evil witch story, and the good witch doesn't have any characters, so we could select one right here and maybe another one right there. There you go. The little pig is going to be George Deschamps. Okay, so now we are able to add new characters to these stories, but I'm not really able yet to get the information of that character on this screen. So what I can do now is I can make it so that I can select a certain character, and I want to see that character's information show up on the screen right here. So I need something similar to this. The only problem is that I can click on this one, but I can't edit these fields, and that's not really a problem because if I want to change this field, it shows up here anyway, so I can always change it here. Like if this little pig becomes a little dog, then I could change it here and it updates here as well. So that's kind of cool. But with the characters, I want to be able to select one, but if I select one, I get my drop down, and I do need that drop down to be able to select characters for this story. So I need to make my portal a little bit wider so that I can add a button. Let's make it like so. And then maybe, should we have the button in the back or in the front? Maybe just put it in the back. That's probably going to be good enough. So it's a tiny little button. And I'm going to just write select. Okay, that shows up. That's good. And then what do I want for the size? Oops, this is in centimeters. Let's put it in points. This is 21 points. This is 22 points. Let's make it 21 points high, so it's the same height as the field. And then I can nicely line it up. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to give this one a different color. Yeah, green is fine. Okay, cool. So I can select a character. Now, there is no character to select here, but it does show up. And this is kind of where you can add a new character, but I don't really want to be able to select this one. So what I can do is I can make it so, because actually if you look at it, for this one, this is our join table, but this is not an actually existing record. So there is no value in the ID field of this record. So what I can do is tell this button, there is this functionality here where you can hide an object, and I can hide this button when there is no value in the ID field of the join characters stories table. So very simple, I can say if is empty join character stories ID, then I would like for my object to disappear. Let's see if it works. Yeah, nice. So this select button doesn't show up there. Now another thing that I need, and see, it kind of works very well. Another thing that I need is if I have accidentally selected a character that I don't want in this story, I have to be able to delete them, which I can't do right now. So I need to make this yet even wider so that I can add another button in the end. And I usually like to use images, a little red cross in the end there. Where do I have it? Like this one maybe. That's a teeny tiny one. Ooh, and that's actually not so smart, because now my little red cross is right next to my select button. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this select button to the front, and I'm going to bring my fields, and I should definitely get both of my fields. I'm going to bring those to the back. Now remember that there are two fields on top of each other, so you're going to want to select them both. Okay, so this one, need to line it up nicely, is going to be a button setup, and this could be a very simple one, a single step, which is a delete portal row with the dialog on. That's good, because the dialog is going to ask you, are you sure you want to delete this one? So now if I want to get rid of the Daisy Duke, I can delete that one and it's gone. Now I do want to set this one up to change to a hand cursor. Okay, so we've already gotten a bit far. Now we need to get this button to work. And in order to understand how we're going to do this, we can look at our relationships diagram. So we are on a layout based on stories. We have that join record where we have a bunch of characters from here, but the characters that are in here, the problem is that this table is not related to the one that we're actually on. And it's always a good idea to create direct relationships with the main table that your layout is based on. And the thing is, what we're going to do is we're going to click on a certain character. And what I would like to do is get that character ID to be stored in this table, and that will become our selected character. And then when we have that character ID in here in our stories table, then we can directly relate to a table occurrence of the character's story, and then that would be related directly to my stories table, and then it doesn't go through all of these different relationships. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create in my stories table a new field called selected character ID if I want, and then there's going to be a number field. Okay, that's kind of cool. And so what I need to do is I'm going to quickly bring this one here so that we can see it from my stories selected character ID. Great. So what my button needs to do is extremely simple. Just put the ID of this character in this field. So we're going to make a script for that. And the script, we will call it select character. And then basically it's a simple set field step, because we're going to put a value in a field. And the target field is very simple. It's going to be my selected character ID and the value that I want to put in there. Now remember, this is coming from our join table, and it's the character ID. Very simple stuff. And then you know what I'll do just to make sure, commit record request. That's basically the same as hitting a tab or a return and really saving that value into that field. So that's what I will do as well. So I'm going to hit Command S to save this script. I'm going to go back into layout mode to set up this button. I'm going to go to button setup and say perform script. And the script is going to be select character, and I'm going to change my cursor to a hand. So if I do that, George is apparently ID number 5 and Lynn is ID number 3. So I'm selecting those. That's kind of good. One more thing I might want to add is the same trick as I had here with the green stuff. Now if I remember, I have two fields on top of each other and I'm seeing only the top field, so I can put the conditional formatting simply on the top field there. Oops, I want to add not a value but a formula. So let's choose formula first and then click add. And the formula that I want is again very simple. If my selected character ID is equal to my join character ID, character ID, sorry, then I would like for that field to be light green. Let's see if that works. Yes. So now my selected character is lighting up and it's green. Cool. So now that I have the ID of my selected character directly in my main table, I can now get the character information related from this table. So if we look at my relationships, I have my selected character ID, and basically what I can do now is I could Alt drag this one, create a new table occurrence of characters, and I can basically say characters story selected. So this is going to be my selected character, and I can take my selected character ID and relate it to the ID here. I can make this one a bit smaller, this one a bit smaller, and then I can put this one on the bottom right there. Selected, there you go. And now what I can do is on this layout, I can start adding a bunch of fields, and I can just do that from my field picker. And if I take fields from my selected characters, then I can do name, last name, personality, background, and picture. I can add all of those fields here. Boom. And that's good. I don't really need this one anymore. There you go. So what I could do is maybe I could set this picture. I don't actually need this label. I could set the picture here maybe. That's not bad. Let's make it a bit bigger. And then I could have those fields. Well, anywhere I want really. Doesn't matter. I'll just keep them here. Okay, that's kind of good. And then let's see if this works. Haha, this looks like it's kind of working, so that's cool. So now I can just kind of select whichever character I want. And any story that I want. There you go. So I've got all my stories and I've got a whole bunch of characters there as well. Okay, so this is already pretty cool. Maybe one more thing I would like to add, because the cool thing is now I can basically do a lot of stuff. But still one thing that is missing that I can't do yet. If I want to create, like say I'm working on this story and I want to add a character and I realize like, oops, this character doesn't exist in my database yet, then I have to create a new character. Now you might know that if you are in like if you're in a table, then you can create new records in a related table. And if you look at the relationship, that's what this checkbox is for. But the problem is I am on my stories table, and this is a problem we're always going to have with a join table. I am on my stories table, and I can create related records in my join characters stories table. But what I want to do is I want to create new characters, and those new characters should then be created here. But this table occurrence here is not directly related to this one right here. So it is basically, it's one step too far. So I cannot both create a new character and also relate that character to this story. That's not something that I can directly do, but I can use a little trick to do that. Now, how that would work basically is I would create a character. I would remember that character ID. I would also remember the story ID of the story I'm on, and then I would go first of all go and create that character, and then go here and create a new record where I relate that story with that new character. I have to create a new record in here with those two IDs, and then that will have happened. But those are a few steps, a few things that need to be done in order to create a new character and relate it to that story. I'm going to need a script for that. And also what I'm also going to need is a couple of fields in here that I can fill in so I can give my new character a name. So what's going to happen is I'm going to look here, I'm going to want to add a character. I'm going to realize that this character does not yet exist, and so I want to add this new character and relate it to this story. Okay, in order to do that, I need to be able to enter a name for that character. So I'm going to need a few fields here. So in my stories, I'm going to need, let's call this a temp field, temp name. And it's going to be a text, and then temp last name. And what I might want to do, just for safety's sake, if you're going to be using this file with other people, just for safety's sake, you might want to turn these into global fields, because if you do, then those fields are kind of unique for every user, and you don't accidentally end up with someone else's character that someone else is making at the same time. Okay, great. And that's also just a field that we're going to be using temporarily for just a short amount of time. So it's kind of a cool idea to just make that a global field. Now we're going to have to add those fields here somewhere. And I'm just going to, for now, maybe put them on this layout just to keep it easy. But I think later on I'm going to put them in a popover. So let's use these fields here. Let's just keep the labels on there for now so that we can see kind of what we're doing. And then temp last name. Yeah, that just fits. And then we're going to need a button, which is going to be, let's make it big, and relate to this story basically. But yeah, let's not go over the top. Okay, cool. So let's give this a yellow. We don't have yellow yet on this layout. So what we're going to do is, let's say that we want to, the little dog, so, well, the little dog, yeah, that's the character we still need. We want to create this character and then relate it. So a few steps we need to do. First of all, we need to remember the name of the character. But actually, because we put that in global fields, one of the cool features of a global field is that a global field, the value of a global field is available everywhere in the database, whether if that table is related or not. So that's kind of cool. What we can do actually to look at how this global field works is we could go to our table of stories. We could add those fields right here. And then you will see that little dog is the value that I filled in while I was on one record. I was on this record of this story, but the value is the same in all of the records. And that's because it is a global field. Actually, even if I go to the characters here, it actually does have a relationship, doesn't it? Well, even if I would be in a totally new and unrelated table, I could pull up those fields, and I could even just show you to prove my point. File manage database, let's do new table. Oops, I don't want any spaces. If I make a totally new table, that has no relationship to anything whatsoever. Boom, and I go there and I make a new record. I can just pull up from stories the temp name and the temp last name, and they will show those values. So there is no relationship whatsoever between my new table and anything else, but still my global fields are showing up here. So the cool thing about this is no matter where you are, no matter what layout you are on in your database, your global field values are always available everywhere, which is pretty awesome stuff. So the reason that I'm explaining this to you is because we're gonna create a script where we're gonna move to a different layout and then create a record and fill out these names. We don't really have to set these as a variable because no matter where we are, we can see those values and we can get them and we can set them. So let's think again for 1 second before we create our script. I'm gonna remove this new table because I don't need it. Okay, so let's think about what we're going to do here. We're going to go and start from our stories. We're going to fill in the temp name and the temp last name. Then we're going to go all the way over to characters. We're going to create a new record there. And then we're going to go in here and we're going to set the story ID and the character ID. So in order to do that, at the start, we need to remember our story ID, and when we've created a new character, we need to remember our character ID. Then we need to go in here and create a new record and fill those values in. Okay, bunch of steps. If you write them down, then you will basically have your script. So let's go ahead and create that one. Let's call this one create and relate new character. Ooh, that's a long one. So the first step we're going to do is set variable. We need to remember our story. Wow, I can't type anymore. Story ID. We need to remember that one, and the story's ID is of course in there. It's very easy. Then what we're going to do is we don't have to remember that name because it's in a global, it's into global field, so that's kind of cool. So we're just going to maybe freeze our window so we don't see the window changing. That's never very nice. Then we're going to go to layout. And we're not going to go to the original layout, we're going to go to the layout of characters. And actually, because I've made these, I can just go to the table of characters right here, that Excel type view, because that one takes a little less time to load because it doesn't have any like visual stuff, buttons and stuff, and conditional formatting and stuff like that on it. So it'll load faster. Not that that's going to make a big difference in our file, but yeah, in a big file it might make a difference. So we're going to go to characters. Then what we're going to do is we're going to do new record request. Then we're going to set the field, and we're going to set in characters, we're going to set the name with the value of stories temp name. And then we're going to set, let's copy paste this one, we're going to set the character's last name with the value of stories temp last name. Okay, that's kind of cool. Then once we've done that, we're going to remember the character ID. So set variable for my character ID. I'm going to tab, and you've probably noticed this already, when I tab, a variable name always has a $sign in front of it. That's just kind of necessary. That's how you can identify a variable. And you can make a variable is basically a value that we're going to create and remember. And we're going to remember that variable, that value, throughout the entire script. When our script stops, the value of this variable is forgotten. If you need to get to use that variable in another script later on, you can make it a global variable, and to make it a global variable you need to add a second $sign in the front here. So like that would make it a global variable that is remembered even after the script is done. But we don't need that right now, so let's hit OK. So basically we have our story ID, our character ID, our new character has been created, and then we need to create that join record. So go to layout, layout, join character stories. Then we're going to do basically the same thing. So new record request, so new record request. And then we're going to do again a set field. Whoops. Set field. Okay. And the specified field is going to be join character story. We're going to set the story ID with the story ID. So I'm going to double click this one. I'm going to copy this. I'm going to paste this in here as the value so that I don't make any typos. And I'm going to also copy paste this one because next to the story ID I also need the character ID, and that's going to be character ID like it's written here. And I'm going to copy this one and I'm going to paste this one in here, character ID. Okay, great. So basically I've gone, and if I want I can set some notations in here by hitting a, what is that, a hash sign or something like that. Create and join record. And this one will be create character record. Okay, so I've created my new character, I have created my join record, and then after this I'm going to be going back to my original layout. So go to layout, original layout, that's fine. Sounds good to me, so let's save this one. Let's close this for now. Let's set up this button. And let's see, we want to perform a script, and the script is create and relate to new characters. We want this to change to a hand, and I'm kind of nervous now because I don't know if it's gonna work. Okay, maybe one more thing we want to add to our script. I just thought of this. Once we do that, we actually, you know what, I'll show you first and then you will understand better. I'm not going to explain it, I'm going to show it. Okay, so I'm kind of nervous as to what's going to happen. So if I want to make sure that my script runs well, what I can do is if you use Filemaker Pro Advanced, you can use a script debugger and your data viewer. So I'm going to quickly call these up here. Now this is kind of big, so I'm going to make it a bit smaller. And your data viewer, and these things will allow you to kind of step through your script one step at a time, and so you can see what's going on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on my button, and so now nothing happens because my script that wants to start is basically stopped, and now I can just kind of step through it one step at a time to see what's happening. So what's going to happen is I'm going to perform a script that is called create and relate new character. That's cool. And if I use this down arrow button in my step into, or F6, then I can just kind of step into that script and go through one step at a time. So my first step is going to be set a variable, and in my data viewer here I can see all the data I'm working with. These are all kinds of fields that are going to be used in this script, and some of them are still in an unrelated table, but in a while we'll get there. So if I just step through here, the first thing that's going to happen is set variable. So if you look here, that variable will be created. So I'm going to step through it, and my variable is created, and the story that we're dealing with now is the story ID number 3. So this way you can kind of keep a good eye on everything that is happening. The next step is freeze window. Of course that doesn't do anything for me because I'm using my script debugger right now, so my screen will not be frozen. Go to layout characters. Okay, so this is this table view. Then I'm going to create a new record. Let's kind of skip through it. It is created. The ID is number 6, and you can kind of see that here my character's ID is number 6, but in a minute I'm also going to create a variable for that, so you will see that happening as well. So I'm going to set my field little dog. That's happening right here. That's good. A variable is created here, so I've got story number 3 and character number 6. Now I'm going to go and create my join record. So I'm going to go to this join layout. I could probably also put this one in table view later so that it looks a little better to kind of see all my data. This creates a new join record, and it sets my story ID and my character ID. So number 3 and 6, that looks good. And then I'm going to go back to my original layout. And as I can see right here, my little dog has been added. Now if I close these again, one thing that I'm noticing is that my other character here is still selected, so that could be a little confusing. So a few things that I want to add to my script. Now first thing I want to add is that when I have created a new character, I would like for this character to also be selected. But another thing, these values are still in here. Now I just used my script debugger and data viewer, and so I went through my script very slow. But if I don't use those and I just click on my button, then my little dog is created extremely fast, and I could, if I don't notice this, I could accidentally click on it multiple times. And now basically when I go to my characters, here I see that my little dog has been created 3 times. That's kind of a problem, and that's kind of a really bad database design if you allow that to happen. So a few things we can do to make sure that that doesn't happen. Let's go back into our script and let's see what we can do here. Okay, first of all, when we go back to our original layout, I would like for my newly created character to be set as the selected character. So I'm going to add another set field. And the field that I want to set is my story's selected character ID. And I want for that one to be my character that I just created. So that's this one here. So I'm going to copy this variable name. And I'm going to set it in here because that's the value that I would like to have showing up in my selected character ID field. Okay, I also want to empty my temporary name field so that I can't immediately create the same character. And so I'm going to do set field. So I'm going to specify my target temp name, and I'm going to set 2 quotation marks because that basically means nothing. Then I'm going to copy paste this one and say that I want the same for my last name, and just to be sure I will have a commit records request step with the dialog off, just to really save that, store that, and make sure that these are really empty. So let's try this again. Let's try another one. Big dog. Okay, cool. Let's create this character. Okay, so these have been emptied. This character has been selected, which is awesome. And now I can fill in this information right here. He is really mean. Okay, cool. And then I could see, if I go to my characters, let's say the characters with the portal, then I've got my big dog in here, and he is really mean. So that's kind of cool. So that looks like it's working. If I go to my table of characters, I can see that this is kind of clean and nicely filled in, but my join, let's put this one up like so. I think I've got a few empty ones that I saw just now in my previous stories. Let's see. Yep, this one. I think I've got a few empty ones here. So maybe what I need to do is, oh, that's the wrong one. Let's do Shift Command D to go to File, Manage Database. And when I delete a character, I would like to also delete that join record. So I'm going to do delete here. Boom. Great. Okay, cool. Because I just deleted a few of those, and then my join records were not deleted. So I'm going to test this out by first deleting these 2 here manually. If I delete my big dog character, then this one should also be gone. So let's go to my characters. This is my big dog. Let's delete my big dog character. And then if I go back to my stories here, yeah, so that join record is now also gone, and so is my big dog character. So that helps keep it clean and neat and organized. So let's try this one again. Big dog. Boom, I can create this one, but if I accidentally click my record again, then there's a new character created that's actually kind of empty, so that's not good. What I want is to prevent that from happening. People might accidentally press this button without filling this in, and then you're going to get a bunch of empty stuff, which is not interesting. Now you could fix that by then typing a name, oops, bigger dog in here, and that still kind of fixes that. But if that's a functionality that you want, fine, leave it. But if you don't want that, maybe we could set up a little warning here. I always like to kind of try to close up my file as much as possible, so make it as dummy proof as possible so that people can't make mistakes. So I'm going to add an if statement, and basically what we're going to do is, if no new name has been filled out, we're going to just kind of tell people the correct way to use the database by telling them, oh, would you please fill in a name first before you hit this button, and then eventually user will kind of figure it out. If is empty, and the field is going to be, you know what, let's go ahead and click on this if x here. Yeah, I know that cannot be found. If is empty temp name, or is empty temp last name. Then what I would like is for there to be a beep and a show custom dialog, which is going to tell me no names and oof. Please enter the character name and last name first. And then they have to say okay, cancel is not useful, so I'm going to put that away. The character name and last name first, and then maybe what I'll do is I will go to field and I will go to the temp name field. Okay, that's kind of cool. And then what we're going to do is we're going to halt the script, because obviously we want to stop at that point. If no name or last name has been filled in, we want to beep, give an error warning, and then go to that field and stop everything, because we need to stop there. Okay, the cool thing about this is if we save and close this one, I can't accidentally create an empty character. Please enter the character name and last name first. Okay, good. And I click that, and then I'm in this thing here, and then I have to fill in the names first before I click this button again. And that way a user will very quickly learn what he has to do to create a new character in here, and that's kind of cool. Okay, so that's kind of cool. Let's see, what else did I have here? I could even... let's say I have a story about the Good Witch. I want to create a new character, yoga girl. I can create and relate that character, and I can fill in the rest of the information as well. I could even just drag in a new picture, and then if I go to my layout characters, even my yoga girl here is showing up with picture and everything. So the cool thing about this is that, oops, I just accidentally clicked this one. I don't want that. I want to go back. So the cool thing is that we can do a lot of stuff on this layout, and we don't really ever have to go to any other layout. I think we've done most of the stuff. This still looks a bit messy, so what we're going to do is create a little popover button here. Let's make it big here. And let's say create a new character. Okay, and let's have our popover button at the bottom there, and then it says new character name. And then what we're going to do is we're going to put these fields and this button in here, so we're going to drag them over here. Character name, and we're going to give this one is going to be last name. Okay, something like this. Move this over a bit, make the fields a bit bigger. Cool. We can always make a popover bigger as well, but we don't really have to. We do want to make it a bit smaller maybe. And then what we're going to do is make this one really huge. Okay. Something like this. Okay, let's see if this works. So I want to create a new character, and let's say nerdy girl. Let's create and relate this character. My nerdy girl is selected. Let's drag an image in here. Boom. And actually very quickly I can just create new characters and basically relate them to my story that I'm writing right here. And that way basically what happens is that my database gets nicely filled in. I could maybe put this stuff here. And I don't really have to move around a lot. All of the stuff is happening on one layout. The stories are all here. All my characters are all here. I can make new characters. I can select existing characters. This list just keeps getting bigger. And this is pretty sweet and pretty cool. Maybe one more thing that I want to do then is if I go to my characters layout here, I might want to kind of list the stories that a character is in. And that's basically... the same thing. It's just a simple portal based on that join. Actually, now I have to go in here because my character is not yet related to this join. That's kind of cool. I will just do this then. I just do this. I'll take both of those and I will alt drag them. Now what I will often do is when I have a join, I will actually take the characters and the stories table and put the join in between them. Now I've kind of separated those, and in this case this might be a little bit annoying, but it's all right. I'll just fix it like this. Stories, characters, join characters, stories too. Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of annoying that it is two different ones now, but that's all right. A character's ID, character ID, story ID, yep, fine. And then I can choose whether if I want to be able to make new stories from this side as well or not. If I delete a character, do I want to delete those join records? Yes, I do. Yeah, okay, I don't need this one from this side actually, but that's cool. Characters. Okay, cool. Let's go back here. Let's make that little list here. The join characters stories. Do I want to be able to delete here? Yeah, okay. Allow scrolling, and then basically what we're going to get here is from stories characters, we're going to get the title. Oh yeah, no, actually I did it wrong. I need from join character story, I need to start with the story ID because otherwise I can't make a drop down here. And this needs to be a drop down for the stories, so I need to make a new one. This is actually stuff that we've already done before, just in the other direction. So I need from my stories the ID and the title. Oh no, I want to include all values, but show values only from the second field. I only want to see the story and not the ID. I don't care too much about the ID of the story, but I do need to then alt drag this one from stories character. This needs to be the title. Yep, without a label. This doesn't need to be a drop down, but an edit box available in find but not in browse mode. And this one is available in browse but not in find mode. And I want to select both of them and give them a default here because otherwise I don't have the borders. And then let's line them up. And then I have to also have that little X. If you're in layout mode and you kind of do this one, then you're going to the other layout. So I can just go ahead and copy and paste this one in here, go back to this layout. I'm going to put this one here. And the button is still the same. It's just simple delete portal row setup, so that's good. So now I can see that this character is in the story. Maybe I need to put a title in here as well. Oops, that's some annoying thing that Filemaker does. Stories, let's make it nice and bold. Cool. So I've got my stories, and this character is in The Good Witch, and then if you go through here, you will see that other characters are in other stories. This one is in 2 stories, and again, that little bug that Filemaker does that is annoying. You have to just nudge the field up a bit and then nudge it back. And then we can see that this guy is actually in 2 stories. And I can even select another story as well. So if I would like to add this guy, George Duchamp, also to the Evil Witch, then this guy will be in all 3 stories. And if I go to my stories layout, then I will see that George Duchamp is in here, he is in here, and he is in here as well. So he's in all of the stories, but I can also just delete him now from whichever story I want, and then he will in his own layout also not be in this story anymore. So basically that way it works from the 2 sides, which is pretty cool. All right, I think we've done pretty much everything here. There's also, of course, a lot of other stuff that you can add, but I think this was a kind of cool, neat little exercise, and I hope you guys learned something new. All right, ciao. If you guys want to learn a ton more about FileMaker, you can head over to my Udemy page where I've got a bunch of entire FileMaker courses online. You can follow them, and basically we make entire FileMaker systems from scratch, and I'll take you on the entire process step by step. There is even one that is completely free, so you can just follow that free of charge, and that is a beginner tutorial where we make an entire contacts database. That's a really fun one that you can follow that can teach you the basics of FileMaker. So head over there by following the links in the description, and I'll see you guys there.